Imagine for a moment a traveler lost in the wilderness. He is given a map, a compass, and a guide, one final chance to find his way home. But instead of taking the path, he tears the map, tosses the compass, and mocks the guide. My friends, you were that guide. God placed you in someone's life as a light in their darkness, a voice calling them toward truth. Not because you were perfect, but because you were willing. You carried love, patience, and understanding, gifts they did not deserve but desperately needed. You bore burdens that were never yours to carry, hoping they would finally see, finally change. But they did not. They mocked the map, they ignored the compass, and they mistook your kindness for weakness, your love for something they could manipulate. They did not recognize that you were sent as a last chance, a final invitation to redemption. And so, they turned away. But hear this truth. Their rejection of God's mercy through you does not define your worth. God did not send you to save them, only to offer the way. You were the lighthouse, but they closed their eyes to the light. You were the open door, but they refused to walk through it. Their choice was never in your hands. Yet, here is the beauty of it all. What they rejected, God will redeem. Every tear, every sleepless night, every wound, none of it is wasted. Just as Joseph's betrayal led to a greater purpose, your suffering is shaping something greater in you. You were never the victim of their cruelty. You were the evidence of God's love. And now, your story is not one of loss, but of transformation. So walk forward, not with bitterness, but with the quiet confidence of one who was sent. Sent not to be broken, but to be made whole. Sent not to lose, but to learn. Sent above all for a purpose that does not end where their chance was lost. They refused the map, but you, my friend, are still on the journey, and God who sent you will not leave you without a destination. God, in His infinite mercy, often sends people into our lives as an opportunity for change. Some people recognize this, embrace it, and allow themselves to be transformed. Others, however, reject the very grace that could save them. A narcissist by nature resists change. Their world revolves around self-preservation, control, and a carefully constructed illusion of superiority. They do not easily admit fault, nor do they willingly acknowledge the damage they cause. Yet, even for the hardest hearts, God extends a chance, sometimes a last chance, and often that chance comes in the form of a person. You did not enter their life by accident. There was a reason you were placed in their path. You carried qualities they lacked: compassion, patience, understanding, and a willingness to see the good in someone who had long since stopped looking for it in themselves. You became a mirror, reflecting both their best and their worst, forcing them to face what they had carefully hidden away. Your presence was not just another fleeting relationship, it was a divine intervention, an opportunity for them to confront their patterns, their selfishness, and their deeply rooted wounds. At first, they may have seen you as a source of admiration, someone to be impressed by or to use for their own validation. Narcissists thrive on admiration. They collect it like currency. But something about you was different. You were not just another admirer, another enabler, another person willing to feed their ego. You saw beyond their carefully crafted exterior. You recognized the pain behind their arrogance, the insecurity beneath their cruelty. And for a moment, perhaps just a fleeting one, they were faced with a choice. God was working through you, using your love, your patience, and your presence to offer them something they rarely encountered: true, unconditional care. Not the kind that demanded their perfection, nor the kind that was based on illusion, but a care that saw them fully and loved them anyway. This was their chance, perhaps their final one, to break the cycle, to let go of the pride, the manipulation, the endless need to dominate, to accept that they were not above correction, not beyond redemption, to see, maybe for the first time, that they had been given an opportunity, not to control, but to be transformed. But change is painful. It requires humility, and humility is the one thing a narcissist fights against the most. To admit fault is to relinquish power. To acknowledge wrongdoing is to dismantle the very foundation of their self-image. So instead of embracing the grace extended to them, they rejected it. Instead of choosing healing, they chose self-preservation. Instead of seeing you as a gift, they saw you as a threat. Perhaps they responded with anger, pushing you away when you got too close to the truth. Perhaps they doubled down on their manipulation, twisting reality to maintain their sense of control. Or maybe they simply dismissed you, discarding your presence as if you were never significant at all. This was not just personal, it was spiritual. You were not just another person to them. You were a representation of the choice they refused to make. They could have chosen humility. They could have chosen change. But they did not. And it is not because you were not enough, not because you failed in some way, but because they were not ready or willing to receive what was offered. God's mercy is abundant, but He does not force transformation upon anyone. He provides the opportunity, He places the right people at the right time, but He does not violate free will. And they, in their pride, use that free will to walk away from what could have been their redemption. But even in their rejection, there is a deeper truth. You were not sent for nothing. You were not placed in their life to be destroyed, nor were you meant to carry the weight of their decision. Your role was never to save them, only to be the vessel through which they were given the chance. And now, that chance has passed, not because you failed, but because they refused. What happens to them now is not in your hands. God will deal with them in His own time, in His own way. Some people must face complete destruction before they finally wake up. Some must lose everything before they realize what they were given. Some never realize it at all. But none of that is your burden to bear. What you must understand is that you were not abandoned, nor were you used in vain. God does not waste His instruments. He does not place His people in situations that have no purpose. You may not see it yet, but the time you spent, the love you gave, the pain you endured, it all serves something greater than you can comprehend. You were an instrument of grace, a messenger of hope, and though they rejected it, though they turned away from what could have been their last chance, you must not carry that rejection as your own. If anything, this experience was also a lesson for you, a lesson in discernment, in trust, in knowing that love, no matter how deep, cannot force someone to change. A lesson in understanding that God's plans are bigger than one relationship, one heartbreak, one moment of loss. You were faithful in your role, and that is all that was ever required of you. There is a passage in Scripture that says, "Do not cast your pearls before swine, lest they trample them under their feet, and turn and tear you to pieces." It is a harsh truth, but one that applies here. You were the pearl, valuable and full of worth, and they, in their blindness, trampled what was given to them. But that does not make you less valuable. It does not diminish your worth. If anything, it only proves that you are something rare, something beyond their ability to comprehend. And so the chapter closes, not with regret, not with anger, but with the quiet confidence of knowing that you did what you were meant to do. They had their chance, they made their choice. Now it is time for you to move forward, carrying not their rejection, but the knowledge that God will use even this for your good. Pain is one of the greatest mysteries of human experience. It is something we try to avoid, yet it often becomes the very thing that shapes us the most. When we go through suffering, especially at the hands of someone we trusted, it is natural to ask, why did this happen? What was the purpose of all this pain? It is in these moments of deep questioning that we are faced with a truth that is both challenging and comforting. God never allows pain without purpose. At first, this idea seems difficult to accept. How could pain, especially the pain inflicted by another person's selfishness and cruelty, serve any good? It seems unfair, even cruel, to think that something so damaging could have any kind of divine meaning. But when we look through the lens of faith, we begin to see that pain is not just something to be endured, it is something that transforms. It refines, it reveals, and it redirects. It is not the thing that destroys us. It is the thing that brings us closer to what we were always meant to be. God does not cause pain for the sake of suffering. He does not delight in watching His children struggle. But He does use pain as a tool, as a refining fire that burns away illusions, false securities, and misplaced identities. When you encountered the narcissist, when you poured out love and received manipulation in return, when you gave endlessly only to be left empty. This was not wasted. Every tear, every heartbreak, every sleepless night was seen. And more than that, it was being used to shape something greater in you. Pain has a way of revealing what is truly inside of us. When life is easy, it is simple to believe we are strong, kind, patient, and wise. But when we are tested, when we are hurt, abandoned, and betrayed, we begin to see who we really are. Did you notice how much you endured, how much you were willing to give, how much strength you carried even when you felt weak? The suffering you went through was not just about the other person. It was about showing you the depth of your own heart. You learned what it means to love deeply, even when it was not returned. You discovered parts of yourself that you never knew existed. Pain forced you to confront your own limitations, your own desires, and even your own wounds from the past. It made you question what you truly value, what you will tolerate, and what you will never accept again. But pain does not just reveal, it refines. In Scripture, gold is refined through fire. The heat burns away impurities, leaving behind something purer and more valuable. Your suffering was not meaningless. It was a refining fire. It burned away illusions about the narcissist, about yourself, about the nature of love and relationships. Maybe before you believed love could change anyone, that if you were kind enough, patient enough, selfless enough, someone else would finally see their own need for change. But pain taught you that love cannot force transformation. It can only offer the opportunity for it. Maybe before you found security in people, in relationships, in the idea that if you just gave enough, you would be valued in return, but pain stripped away those false securities and forced you to find your worth in something unshakable. It made you realize that your value does not come from how much you are needed, how much you are loved by others, or how much you can endure for someone else. Your worth comes from God alone, and no amount of rejection or mistreatment can take that away. Pain also has a way of redirecting us. We often cling to things that are not meant for us, trying to force them to work even when all signs point to the opposite. Sometimes God allows pain because it is the only thing strong enough to make us let go. If the narcissist had treated you well, if they had given just enough kindness to keep you holding on, you might have stayed in something that was never meant for you. But their cruelty, their manipulation, their inability to value what was given to them, these were all signs pointing you towards something greater. The pain they caused was, in a way, a blessing, because without it, you might have continued to invest in something that was only ever going to drain you. Without the heartbreak, you might never have sought healing. Without the suffering, you might never have been pushed to a place where you could truly see yourself, your worth, and the direction God has for you. God's purpose in your pain is not to punish you, but to prepare you. He is shaping you into someone who is wiser, stronger, and more deeply rooted in truth. He is closing doors that were never meant to be yours so that you can walk through the ones that are. He is teaching you how to love without losing yourself, how to give without being emptied, and how to trust without being deceived. The very thing that seemed like it would break you is actually the thing that is making you unbreakable. One of the greatest lies pain tells us is that we are alone in it. But God has never left your side. He was there in the moments of betrayal, in the nights of loneliness, in the silent prayers that felt unanswered. And He is still here now, using even this for your good. The person who hurt you may never acknowledge what they did. They may never change, never apologize, never even recognize the pain they caused. But their failure to change does not mean you remain bound by the experience. Their refusal to grow does not mean you are stuck in the place they left you. God's purpose in your pain is not to leave you broken, but to bring you into something greater. It is to make you stronger than you ever thought possible, to give you wisdom that will protect you in the future, and to deepen your understanding of what true love and worth look like. The pain may not make sense now, but there will come a time when you will look back and see that it was never wasted. You will see that what you thought was the end was actually a beginning, that what felt like a loss was actually a divine redirection. And you will stand not as a victim of suffering, but as someone who has been refined, strengthened, and prepared for something far greater than you ever imagined. Pain has a way of convincing us that it is the final chapter. When we suffer deeply, especially at the hands of someone we trusted, it is easy to believe that our story has been derailed, that we have lost something we can never get back. But God does not allow pain to be the end. He does not let suffering define us. Instead, He uses it to shape the next chapter of our lives, one that is bigger, fuller, and more meaningful than anything we could have planned. The wounds left by betrayal and manipulation may feel like they have taken something permanent from you, but in reality, they have positioned you for something greater. What you went through did not diminish your purpose. It clarified it. The heartbreak you endured was not a detour. It was a preparation. Every painful experience, every moment of doubt, every time you questioned why you had to go through so much, these were not signs that you were lost. They were signs that you were being refined for something beyond what you could see. You were never meant to stay in the place of suffering. Pain may have been part of your journey, but it was never meant to be your destination. What happened to you does not get to define you. What you do with it does. The enemy would love for you to believe that your pain was pointless, that it stole your future, that you are now broken beyond repair. But God has a different plan. He takes what was meant for evil and turns it into something powerful. He does not just heal wounds, He transforms them into testimonies. The person who hurt you thought they were taking something from you. Maybe they believed they were diminishing your worth, your confidence, or your ability to love again. But they did not realize that in their attempt to break you, they were actually pushing you towards something they could never take away: your calling. They may have dismissed you, mistreated you, or underestimated you, but they did not define your destiny. If anything, their rejection only made it clearer. God does not waste suffering. Every painful experience becomes a tool in His hands. The lessons you learned, the resilience you developed, the wisdom you gained, these were all preparing you for what comes next. Before, you may have seen the world through a different lens. You may have been willing to give your energy to things that did not serve you, to people who did not value you. But now, you have a deeper understanding of yourself, of others, and of what truly matters. That wisdom is not meant to stay buried in your heart. It is meant to be used. Your calling is beyond what happened to you. It is beyond the people who hurt you, beyond the moments of loss, beyond the years you may feel were wasted. Nothing was wasted. God does not allow His children to walk through fire without reason. The pain you endured has given you something priceless: a testimony, a depth of understanding, a strength that cannot be shaken. These are the very things that will propel you into the next phase of your life. You may not see it yet, but there is someone who needs the wisdom you have gained. There is someone who is where you once were, questioning their worth, struggling to understand why they had to suffer, wondering if they will ever heal. And when the time comes, you will be the one to remind them that there is hope beyond the hurt. You will be the one who shows them that pain does not get to have the final say. You will be the evidence that healing is possible, that restoration is real, that God truly does bring beauty from ashes. What was meant to break you is now the very thing that makes you stronger. You do not need to look back with regret, wondering why things happened the way they did. You do not need to carry the burden of trying to make sense of someone else's choices. Their decisions were theirs alone, but your response, that is where your power lies. You get to decide what you do with the pain. You get to decide whether it keeps you stuck or pushes you forward. And forward is the only direction God calls His children to go. He never leads us back into chains. He does not ask us to return to places that diminished us. Instead, He calls us into newness, new strength, new vision, new purpose. You are not who you were before. The pain changed you, but it did not destroy you. It refined you. It prepared you. It set you apart. And now you walk forward not as someone defined by what they lost, but as someone defined by what they have gained. The calling on your life is bigger than the heartbreak you endured. The story God is writing is greater than the chapter that hurt you. You are more than what happened to you, more than the wounds, more than the loss. You are a testimony in the making, a living reminder that pain is never the end of the story. And as you step into the next season, you will see that the very thing you thought would break you was actually the thing that prepared you for something greater than you ever imagined.